Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today it is time for a review of the new White Lies album, Nightlight. Nightlight is the seventh album from the English rock band White Lies. Recently, over the last few years, and to be honest, for most of their career, I think have been seeing a fantastic upwards trend in the quality of their music with the release of nearly every album. With their previous release, As I Try Not to Fall Apart, being not only, I think, their absolute best album, but also my personal album of the year for 2022. And that, along with a handful of the albums coming before it, I think really demonstrate how right now they are a band who are absolutely in their prime, which I think continues to be quite evident on Nightlight as well, as they are still showing off everything they're fantastic at, being that incredible blend of rock with post-punk and even a little bit of synth pop in there as well, which I think is a really cool blend of genres that they pull off seamlessly, as well as just the musicianship and the chemistry between the band members being so evident in their music. And I also find that most of the performances on this album as well also just absolutely show them at the top of their game. I think the way that this album opens is an interesting choice of song, with Nothing on Me being not typically the kind of thing you would expect from an album opener from White Lies. It's still, of course, an absolutely fantastic blend of rock and electronic, and I think they actually pull off a much shorter and punchier song really well. And I think that despite how almost abrupt of a beginning it is, it does give the album a really good energy to start off with. And then the following song, All the Best, I think follows on really well from that. And this is the song that sees them taking a much more progressive style, as this one is much longer, which is more the kind of style I'm generally used to expecting from them at this point. I absolutely love the guitar riff that opens this song. I think it's just such a cool and almost fun moment. And then the way the track teases you a little bit with a much more simple and stripped back sounding opening verse. But of course, just by nature of how progressive this song is, there is a lot more to come after that, as it then goes into an incredible chorus that I think has some of the absolute best guitar work on the album, as well as absolutely amazing vocals. I also really like the instrumental bridge on this track. I think it's such a cool moment, just with the very distant guitar sound effects that give it this really cool atmosphere. And then, of course, just going into such a cool and unique guitar solo after that as well. I'm a huge fan of the very subtle electronic sounds on Keep Up, which I think is just a really cool little touch on an otherwise mostly guitar-based song. I also find this to be genuinely one of the most well put together songs on the album, with each part just flowing seamlessly in and out of each other so well, and it genuinely just makes it feel like one of the most complete and well-paced songs that the album has to offer. And then it just goes into an absolutely incredible and super passionate and anthemic ending. I just particularly love the vocal style, as well as just the way the guitar is being played in such a unique way. I think that on Juice they are delivering what I believe to be one of their best and catchiest hook lines ever, and I particularly love the piano on this track as well, not obviously being the driving instrument, but just being there to provide a really nice atmosphere, and it's just a really cool little touch, again, on an otherwise mostly guitar song. I think that this song in particular, more than most of the others, again showcases that fantastic musicianship I was talking about earlier, with there just being so many little moments and details that show the band working together so well, with all of them just feeling so necessary and meaningful towards the song's progression. Everything Is Okay, I think, is a nice little break from the more grandiose style that the album has been having so far. And overall, I do still like what the song is going for. There are a handful of little details in there as well I think are pretty cool, most notably just the kind of distant muffled guitar sounds I do quite like. However, the song as a whole I think is just a bit boring and does drag on for quite a bit. And like I said, even though it is somewhat of a needed break from how grand and almost intense the album has been so far, I think that the way that this song does that is maybe just a little bit too much, to the point where it almost feels like it's interrupting the album's flow, especially just with how long this song is, and there is very little it ever really does to try and change it up. I really like that Going Nowhere has an almost playful kind of vibe to it, which I think is pretty cool, but is still showing absolutely fantastic musicianship between all of the band members. I also think that this track has such a good hook line, as well as just being all around so well performed. And again, despite this being one of the much longer songs on the album, I think that it uses that length so well, with each part feeling very necessary, and I think that at any given moment the song really is just showing its full potential. The title track, I think, is maybe just a slightly weaker moment on the album, feeling like it is somewhat just kind of filler, especially on such a synth and guitar heavy album. Having a random little acoustic song in the middle of the track list like that is definitely a bold choice, and I think they almost did pull it off, but it just comes across again as kind of interrupting the flow of the album just a little bit. But I think that the latter half of the song definitely does start to pick up quite a bit, as in the latter half of the song they are distancing themselves from the acoustic kind of sound and going back into more what the album sounded like up until this point. I really am a big fan of the very chaotic kind of style that the guitar playing has on I Just Want to Win One Time, definitely being some of my favourite guitar work that this album has, as well as a lot of the very distorted guitar licks, I think, being a really cool little detail. And overall, overall just managing to be a nice little addition to the atmosphere of the song as well. And I definitely find this song to have one of the most unique outros on the album as they start to incorporate some brass instruments in there as well, which in the mix actually sounds surprisingly good, and I just love how well the outro of this song comes together. And then finally you have In the Middle, which I think progression-wise I find to be one of the most interesting songs on the album, as it really does feel like it's taking you on a journey, almost having movements of sorts. I think that this track just has such a good mix of styles and vibes that it manages to incorporate into the mix, as well as obviously just absolutely brilliant performances from every single instrument involved. In particular, I think that the bass sounds amazing on this song, being one of the most consistent instruments and really just giving the track such a strong backbone. And so as much as I think there are other White Lies albums I overall prefer to this, I think what this album does better than any of those has to just be how well performed it is, as I think that this particular project shows off some of their best and catchiest guitar riffs and hook lines and just everything in between. And I really feel like there is just so much depth musically to this album that a lot of others just don't quite have, as the more you listen to it, the more there are just so many little moments and little details that you may not notice the first few times you listen to it, but once you do notice them, you realize just how necessary and important they are to the album's sound, and which is why I'll be giving this album an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.